I think what GameStop showed was the narrative fallacy on Wall Street. I think for years, there was these folks that sort of, were these wizards behind the veil. And they had a way of conducting themselves that purported to be just intellectually superior to everybody else. But in reality, what that short showed was that they were prone to the same, poor decision-making and broken systems and technologies that everybody else has to deal with. And so I found that kind of funny. I think it also spoke to the fact that, we really haven't looked closely enough at the systems that were broken as a result of 1998 and LTCM, long-term capital management, then 2006, 7, and 8 with Bear and Lehman. And we're allowing the same problem, slightly different, but roughly the same problem, to repeat itself over and over again. And so that's what sort of angered me about GameStop. And then on the back end of it, I just felt like these two worlds collided in a way where I doubt that in the end, in the final analysis, there was any collusion of any kind. But just the stench of this whole thing just goes to show you, back to where we were talking about before, about how difficult it is for normal, everyday folks to have access to any kind of return. So if you sort of we break down the capitalist philosophy, they are just fundamentally stuck in this cul-de-sac of always being labor and always being sort of at the, ownership of capital, of the ownership class. And the fact that normal folks can't get access to returns and, close the inequality gap is just going to make all of the things we're dealing with today a lot worse than they already are. I think hedge funds are a really important part of the financial infrastructure, and I think that they should exist, and I hope that the ones that are good can thrive. But I also believe that disclosure needs to get improved. I think in every other part of society, as the internet has become more sophisticated, as software has become more sophisticated, things have erred towards real-time disclosure of everything in every market. It's just not true in finance, where people are able to sort of use the rules and bend them to obfuscate the truth. So, for example, there was a rule that the SEC was considering where you wouldn't have to publish your longs anymore on the same frequency. To me, that's nuts. I think that actually, we live in a world where your longs and your shorts should be published in real time. Because again, what separates you should be your analysis and your interpretation of the facts, not obfuscation. Another thing is that I think that you should be, forced to disclose the margin that you're running and how much leverage you have. And, I think that hedge funds and banks are no different. They're a critical part of the financial infrastructure. They should be treated in the same way. And instead, I think after 2007 and 8, a lot of the risk effectively, quote unquote, went off balance sheet and away from the banks and towards these other really important actors, but who just don't have that much oversight. I still think hedge funds will do really well. I still think that there are some folks who are incredibly talented, who will make just a ton of money for themselves and for their investors. But I think disclosure needs to go up. In terms of short selling, I buy the fact that it's an important part of the market. I'm not a huge fan of it. I do think that certain folks really use it to run a neutral strategy. And, I think that that's great. But I also think that, now in the world of social media, and we've seen this recently, disinformation can be used to not just cause political damage, but I think disinformation can also cause economic damage. And so I think that the SEC is going to have to deal with that issue and figure that out. How do we manage information or interpretation or sensationalizing of things that all of a sudden can whipsaw the markets up and down? I do want to have a Berkshire-like instrument that is all things, not to sound egotistical, but all things Chamath, all things social capital. Look, I was the one that backed up the truck in 2012 on Bitcoin, 2014 and 15 in Amazon, 2015 in Tesla. These SPACs are doing well. I can be a little judgmental at times, but I'm a good decision maker. And I think I know where the world's roughly going. And I want to translate that. I've made enough money for myself. It doesn't really float my boat. I do it as a demarcation of success and to keep the pressure on. But the best pressure for me was if I, was an instrument that retail, normal, ordinary folks could use to close the inequality gap for themselves. Because of Facebook, quite honestly, got extremely lucky in my early 30s. But this last decade has been training. And, these last few years now, I'm really on the field. I got my pads on and I feel like I can play as good as anybody else. But the reality is all of the things I want to do vastly outweighs the capital that I have. Probably I'm, running $10+ billion, 10, 15 billion. I don't know the exact number, to be completely honest, I should. But I am risk on. And I am moving a lot of balls down the field, myself and my team. And the reality is that those things sometimes consume capital. So at the end of last year, my family office called and said, hey, dummy, you need to put a little bit of money here just to make sure that we have liquidity and we can keep doing all these things. And so I had to sell, a couple million shares of Virgin. I didn't want to. I haven't sold a single share of anything that I've done in the SPAC platform, in the pipes, other than those few million shares of Virgin. So if given my druthers, Erik, and if if I could really just go for it, I wouldn't sell a share of anything I buy because I believe in it. But every now and then I run up into liquidity constraints like everybody else, and I get a call and they say, Chamath, stop, slow down. And I say, no. And then they say, okay, then at least give us a little buffer here so that we can continue to do all the things you want. This is the thing, social capital is more of a name, meaning, is it an entity? Yeah, technically there's a company with the name social capital on it, but everything is flowed through a Byzantine bunch of LLCs and this and that I personally own. This is why, part of the work now that I have to do this year is reorganize myself. So, Social Capital 1.0 was a traditional set of venture funds called Social Capital. Social Capital 2.0 is basically my family office. And for Social Capital 3.0 to become a reality, which I would like to do in the next couple of years, I have to do some cleanup work. Now, and again, this is sort of like, when the music's on, you have to be dancing. And so I haven't had time to do that because, I see opportunities and I want to seize them and I want to invest. Thinking that I'll just come back and clean up whatever organizational mess is created afterward.